We are always practicing something. Every thought we return to, every reaction we reinforce, every relationship we repeatedly enter, every way we meet ourselves. Over time, these movements shape the way we experience life. Practice isn't only what we intentionally choose to do. Practice is what we repeatedly establish. The question isn't whether we have a practice. The question is, what is our practice establishing? Because even what we consciously practice can eventually become unconscious. This isn't a failure of practice, it's the nature of repetition. Repetition creates familiarity, familiarity creates pathways, and pathways, when traveled often enough, can become automatic. This is why conscious practice isn't about arriving somewhere where we no longer forget. It's about developing the capacity to return again and again and again. The purpose of practice isn't to create a perfect pattern. The purpose of practice is to continually reestablish relationship. Relationship with the body, relationship with the breath, relationship with attention, relationship with what is shaping our experience. Before moving forward, before searching for the next answer, before trying to change anything, take a moment to notice where you are. Notice the body. Notice the breath. Notice the movement of attention. Before we can meet life differently, we must first become aware of how we are meeting it. Let's begin. Slow down, gather yourself, return to what is true. This thread of practice isn't a reminder to escape life. It's an invitation to meet life differently, a practice to enter more consciously. Slowing down doesn't mean doing less. It doesn't require leaving the world behind, withdrawing from responsibility, or creating a life without stimulation. It means creating a moment of awareness within the movement. A moment where we consciously, intentionally, purposely interrupt what has become automatic. Before reacting, before believing, before repeating, before becoming the familiar pattern. Slowing down is the moment where awareness enters. We cannot transform what we cannot see, and we cannot see clearly while constantly being carried by momentum. Slowing down creates the space where observation becomes possible, where we can begin to notice, what state am I meeting life from? What is guiding my attention? What movement is asking to be seen? Gather yourself, not because something is missing, not because you are broken, and not because there are pieces of you that need to be repaired. Nothing essential was ever lost. What became scattered was attention, not essence. Through experience, conditioning, through inherited thoughts, fears, expectations, through survival, attention becomes distributed. It spreads. It moves outward. It becomes captured by thought, by reaction, by comparison, and the search for certainty. Gathering yourself is the practice of returning attention back into relationship with what is present, what is meaningful, and what is true. The practice of returning attention back into conscious relationship, back into the body, back into the breath, back into this moment, back into conscious participation. The practice isn't forcing attention to stay. The practice is learning how to return again and again and again. Every return is a relationship being strengthened. Every return is a moment of coming home. Return to what is true. Truth isn't something we create. It's something we become available to recognize. When attention is scattered, we mistake what is familiar for what is true. We mistake what is unfamiliar for untrue. We mistake what we have not yet experienced for what is impossible. We mistake fear for intuition. We mistake validation for connection. We mistake familiar patterns for identity. Returning to what is true is the process of reorienting toward clearer seeing, toward Dharma, toward the intelligence beneath conditioning, toward the part of us that can witness experience without immediately becoming consumed by it. This isn't about rejecting the human experience. The practice isn't about transcending thought, emotion, or relationship. It's about refining the instruments through which the human experience is known, where life is experienced. The body, the breath, the mind, attention, emotion, memory, relationship. All of these are part of the field through which we encounter life. And through conscious practice, we begin to bring them back into relationship. Gathering pieces of you was never about collecting broken parts. It was never about becoming someone else. It was about recognizing what had become scattered. And through practice, gradually bringing attention, orientation, and relationship back together. Not creating a new self, but refining the way life is experienced. That is the practice. That is the return. Something easy to forget is that we are always practicing, not only when we sit on a cushion, not only when we intentionally choose a discipline. Practice is happening all the time. Every thought we repeatedly return to, every reaction we reinforce, every relationship we repeatedly enter, every way we meet ourselves, every place where attention frequently gathers. A conscious practice begins with relationship before it moves toward stillness. Before gathering attention, we must understand what we are allowing to shape it. These become pathways, and pathways that are traveled often become easier to follow. Eventually, we no longer notice that we are walking them. This is how unconscious patterns are formed, not because something is wrong with us, but because repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity creates a sense of certainty. We begin to mistake what is familiar for what is true. This is why conscious practice matters, not because we need to become someone else, but because we need to remember that we are participating. The moment we say, I have arrived, I understand, I have figured it out, this is who I am now, something subtle happens. Even practice itself can become a pattern. Even awareness can become an identity. Even the path can become something we cling to. The very thing that was meant to create freedom can become another structure that limits awareness. Even presence must be continually practiced. Not because presence disappears, presence doesn't disappear, but because the movements of life continue. Attention moves, experience changes, conditions change, the body changes, relationships change, the world changes. And because life is movement, there is always the possibility of being pulled back into familiarity. The practice isn't arriving somewhere where we are no longer affected. The practice is learning how to return again and again and again. Slow down is the conscious interruption. It is the moment we pause the momentum long enough to notice what is moving before the reaction, before the belief, before the familiar story. Because if we don't consciously create moments of interruption, life will eventually create them for us through change, through uncertainty, through loss, through moments that reveal where we have become disconnected from ourselves. This isn't because life is against us. It's because life is always inviting us back into relationship. The practice of returning prepares us for the moments we cannot control. Gathering is the return of attention, not collecting broken pieces, not repairing something that was never broken. Gathering is bringing the scattered movements of experience back into relationship with the body, with breath, with mind, attention, emotion, memory, relationship. When attention is scattered, we are more easily pulled by every thought, every fear, every desire, every interpretation. When attention becomes gathered, there is space. Space to observe, space to discern, space to choose. This is where empowerment begins, not through controlling life, but through becoming less controlled by unconscious movement. Returning to what is true doesn't mean finding a final answer. It means returning to the place where clearer seeing is possible. Because when we are disturbed, scattered, overwhelmed, even our search for truth can become another movement of grasping. We can mistake information for wisdom. We can mistake possibility for clarity. We can mistake intensity for alignment. And this is why grounding matters. Because wonder without grounding can become another place where attention is scattered. Curiosity without discernment can become another form of searching. But when the body, breath, and mind come into relationship, we can meet the unknown without being consumed by it. We can remain open without losing ourselves. We can explore without abandoning our center. This is the practice, not rejecting life, not escaping humanity, but refining the instrument through which life is experienced. Take a moment to notice, not to analyze or judge, not to evaluate whether you did this correctly. Simply notice What changes when you slow down? What do you become aware of when you stop moving automatically? Where does your attention go? And what does it feel like to bring it back with gentleness, with love, with wonder? This is the practice, not the moment of perfect stillness, not the absence of thought, not becoming someone who is never distracted. The practice is the return, the moment you notice attention has moved away from presence and you choose to come back again and again and again. Over time, these returns begin to change the relationship you have with your own experience. You begin to recognize the difference between urgency and clarity, between reaction and response, between seeking validation and creating connection, between being carried by familiar patterns and consciously participating in your life. The practice isn't about gathering something that was lost. It's about gathering what has become scattered, bringing attention back, bringing orientation back, bringing relationship back. And through that relationship, discovering that what you were searching for was never something you had to create. It was something you had to become available to recognize. So when you return to your day, notice, can you pause before the next reaction? Can you feel the moment before the familiar pattern takes over? Can you meet yourself with enough presence to choose differently? This is the ongoing practice, not escaping life, meeting it. So wherever you go from here, whatever moment meets you next, remember, slow down, gather yourself, and return to what is true.